All right, everyone, welcome along there. So, week 6, what we said we'd talk about today was actually what goes on behind the scenes. What are we doing under the covers, as it were, within our Power BI environment? Because we've covered governance, haven't we? And we've built our data model, we've built that first pass, and we've delivered that through. But now what happens? How does that evolve, move forward, and how do we start to really progress and embrace what is our Power BI environment? So let's cut over and have a look and see what we're talking about today. Right, so here we are, little old me, right? Looking at our New York water tower inspections. Now, the thing that we need to remember after last week was around two things, really, isn't it? One thing, two things. So firstly, we've got this idea of Power BI needing to have a governed layer and like a less governed layer. And you need to manage that and you have to understand those processes. And we'll cover that at a different point. There's more to that than just what we're going to cover today. Today is much more about your core processes as they're going to go across your platform and your landscape. So what does that look like? How can we move forward with it? So what we've got really is here, okay? So we've got the idea, haven't we, that we've got sources, we've got a model, and then we've got reports. Okay, so we've got 3 key areas that we're going to be faced with as we look to deal with what our Power BI content is going to be served up and how our people are going to consume it. Okay, we've also got this idea, haven't we, that we've got this really structured area because the source has to come through consistently, doesn't it? We couldn't just go, do you know what? I've decided to change the columns that we're going to bring through. Or, do you know what? We're going to change it. That wouldn't work. Likewise, the model has to have that level of rigor and governance around it. So your source and model information become really governed. Okay, that has to be where you are looking to govern and control and manage and understand what goes on there. And your managed area is where you'll have your visualizations, your charts, your analysis, your apps. Okay, that's your end user consumption layer. And if you don't think through and manage those 2 areas as 2 separate areas, you will just make a huge amount of work for yourself. So we introduced the topic, didn't we, of thin reporting. Okay, now this was something that people, unless you start using the Power BI service, and even once you start using it, potentially it doesn't land that this is in the application, this is how you're supposed to do stuff. Thin reports fall very much in that managed area. Okay, let's change color. Let's go with this one, yeah. Okay, thin. Okay, so we've got thin reports here. Okay, because we're going to access our content time and again. Okay, so we could have, 1,000 reports there, 10 reports, 100 reports, 1,000 reports. Okay, but they're all accessing one model. So it's a very efficient way of working. And because we've been able to build this efficient way of working, it doesn't make sense to apply that same level of rigor to our report content. And remember, the report content is only a visualization layer on top of your model. So your validation, all that sort of stuff will happen at that model layer. Okay, that's where you need to make sure everything is perfect, right, and accurate. Okay, the visualizations will then take care of themselves. Okay, so the way we manage all this is we use what's called RACI. Okay, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Yeah, so the responsible is the person who's going to do it. The accountable is the person who gets sacked if it's done badly. The consulted are then people who are, well, is it a good idea, do you reckon? And the informed are, we decided to do. Yeah, so you've got that. Okay, in practice, it should probably be ARCI, but that doesn't sound quite as good as RACI, does it? I'll let you spell it out yourself, But this is something that you're going to have to think through and get very familiar with, because as we move forward, one of the things we have to start to do is to wrap processes around everything that we do. So we have to build these processes for the governance of it, right? And then for all the governed sections, which is only really source and model, they're the governed bits really, aren't they? Okay, we have to have a core process for it. The managed areas, so our visualization layers, we will still have a process for it, but it will be much lighter weight. There wouldn't be this consultative piece as much, okay, in particular, or informed even. In terms of we're going to manage and update to our data model, for example, who are we going to have to inform? We're going to have to presumably consult with the source people so that we know, well, this is what we're going to do with it. Have you got these columns? Can we get those added in? And then, of course, we've got the whole idea of how's it going to be restructured and actually piecing it together. So we've had a requirement come through that we need to see our year-over-year growth, for example, or something like that. So from these already, you're starting to see that there's something that we really do need to be able to do here, which is very much it needs to be possible for requests to be driven into other tiers. Yeah. So as I say, from our modeling perspective, if we need to change something that can do with the source, we need to know, is that possible? Can the source provide that? Or is it something different that actually the source isn't going to be able to do it? We're going to have to build something either as a short-term, medium-term, or even a long-term solution. All of those need to be considered. And that's part of this whole piece that we need to get through. All right, so here we are, back in the Power BI service, right? And this is two of our thin reports that I've built, okay? And as we can see, I've built these from the production data that we've got coming through. So we've got the data model comes through, the production data, and I can go in and I can say, right, I've got the legacy report here, and we can look at some information. We could even go and open the report and see, all right, this is what this looks like, okay? Got some different page content on it where we can understand what's happening with it. Okay, if we go back, we can go and see the other report that we've got for it. So we've already got two reports built. Okay, and we can start to see we've got some more information coming through, different maps in use. I'm not sure which one we should use for all this, but we can piece together what's happening already. And if we hover over, we can see we've got drill through information already in place. So we can see location reports, actually see exactly what's happening from our location reports. We can drill through into an inspector's report to see actually what does this inspection company actually do in terms of their load. And then we've also, lastly, we've got the ability to come back through and see that same information, but for the labs that are used. So we can start to gauge and understand where labs are, right? Still very bitty, okay? This is not a final finished product because that's one of the steps we need to start thinking about. Because what you can see, if we go back to our first report, the legacy, we've started to overlay some theme information on here, haven't we, in terms of actually making it look something more, whereas the other one didn't. Now, this is a big part of what you're going to need to do. Consumption is key to building your themes. But for the governance side, I hope you can see, if I need to tweak this, it should be easy to tweak, shouldn't it? Especially when you think through that the last step that we haven't talked about is this. We can directly connect to these data sets from Excel. So I can open Excel and I can do pivot charts already, or pivot tables based on my data. I don't need any third-party assistance, help, or anything. It's very much something that a business analyst, somebody in the business, an accountant, anybody who currently does data in the business can access and use. And as soon as they start to access and use our master data model, what does that mean? That increases the importance of that model. And that will also then mean that where they would currently be potentially quite hostile to data presentations, and I'm quite happy to say that, hostile, been enough board meetings where, well, my number says something different, okay? You get rid of that by having everybody using the same master data. And then if Bob's number is different to Steve's number, we can look and we can say, well, all right, someone's put the wrong filter on it or something like that. But every time they use your report and your master data, suddenly they're actually validating all the work and effort that's been done. And the data challenges and queries and waste of time that you get goes. Right? And your business is able to actually do what the business is supposed to do, which is generally make the ka-ching, isn't it? Make money as opposed to go, not happy about. Okay. So have a think about it, but getting the governance layer right is key to this. So you control what happens with the master data. How does that come through? And this is actually managed really well by the Power BI platform. It's not talked about very much. I don't see it discussed enough. Okay. But the fact that from here, in my app workspace, in my workspace that I've got, that this is going to be my app, remember, this is my app experience for the people to come and see. These are the water tower reports we've got internally. Doesn't mention anything, does it, about source, right? And this is beautiful. So what I have to do is I have to click here to come to this workspace to see what's happening in this workspace. And we can see how it works, right? And we can see how it's linked through, where the data marts are, everything like that is all pieced together. So from here, we can see. And what you're going to say is, well, hang on, where have those two reports gone? Now, if I come to this report page to show impact across workspaces, suddenly I can actually see. So we can see we've got the two reports that are there. Let me hide my head. So we can see we've got the two reports down here. And we've got our other workspace as well here, that we've just got the main report that came with the data with the file. Okay, so you can start to really see and understand what's going on. And again, my focus should predominantly be backwards. So actually, where's the source of these coming from? So the calendar, which is from our data flow workspace core. We've got the water tower inspections and where that's from. And you can start to piece together that it's a very controlled way of working, and it's very much about what's going on. What do we need to do next? Okay. So what do you reckon then? Okay, quick whistle-stop tour of what we need to think about from our governance and control layers. Okay. Control and governance of your source manipulations, where the source is coming from, how it's going to be presented up, when it's going to be presented up as well, and then how is that taken through to being part of an analytical model is vital. If you get that wrong, it will fail. Everything you're doing will fail. Power BI won't work, right? Waste of time. Get that right though, and suddenly you've got a tool that will work for the business across multiple layers. Your visualization layers that are going to be on top of that, you're not restricted to one. So because you've got a structured approach where you understand what goes through at each layer, it becomes very possible very quickly to start to say, right, we're going to fold this piece now into our master data. We're going to fold that piece into our master data. And you start to bring more data sources in over time in a very structured and very controlled manner, driven primarily by the report requests. Okay, because we mentioned Bob and Steve earlier, didn't we? So Bob might get 2/3 of their data from your master data report, but there's a third that they can't get. So how can we bring that through? So we plan that piece of work to upgrade our data model to encompass that. We'd identify the sources that are needed after checking, do any of our current sources meet that requirement? And if not, expand those to get the next step through, bring them in, understand when they're going to be available. Do they meet our requirements? Because after all, if we have to get the report refreshed by 9 a.m. every day, and the next bit of data that's going to come through isn't available until 10 a.m. every day, potentially we've got a conflict that our data model is either going to have to be delayed, and then that would have to be accepted. Again, a consultation would need to be had, and a decision would have to be taken, and then that would be informed down. All the way through to, is it actually something that we can put in that master data model? Because you might have something else. So HR stuff, for example, you wouldn't put HR data in a model that was also dealing with your sales, for example, probably, because the business security layer that's needed around those are different. Okay. But you can start to piece those together. You have those meaningful discussions once you start to think about them in that context. Okay. So come back the weekend. We're going to do some extras where we'll talk a little bit more about this and look at some more of the practical side of it, actually looking at it within the Power BI context more, so we can really understand it and really nail these ideas. Okay. Stay safe. Have a great week. Ta-da.